It's now 2 o'clock. The Town of Edisto Beach Special Emergency Town Council meeting is meeting today on June 29th, 2020. There's only one item on the agenda. That is the emergency ordinance number 2020-21 related to protective masks during the COVID-19 pandemic. Would please council have discussion first before there's a motion, which I believe we can do. Parliamentary. Would you prefer to have discussion first or get a motion on the table?
I just get a motion on the table, unless you prefer.
Whatever.
All right. What about you, Ms. Hornsby?
Do what?
Would you prefer to have discussion first or a motion on the table?
However, either way, let's discuss first.
All right. I'm going to call this, and I say, let's do discussion first. Okay. So if there's anything that you want changed, it can be done ahead and will not require a bunch of amendments. Okay. So, Ms. Smart, would you like to start out, please?
Sure. I think that this is a good ordinance. It covers most of the things that I think need to be covered. There's one thing, though, that I would like to discuss, and that is the age of the youngest person to wear it. Actually, two things, I'm sorry, and also the amount of the fine. I just wonder if 10 is too old to say that. I think we ought to start it younger than that people ought to be required to wear a mask.
So we have in South Carolina, you cannot charge children of a certain age with offenses because we have what's called the tender years doctrine. And I'm pretty sure that's, at least that in my draft of the ordinance, I'm pretty sure the other municipalities, that's why they've done this.
Okay.
Because the CDC recommends two and under.
I read that, yeah.
So there's a gap there, but there's an enforceability issue when you have this. In other words, the chief can't go find a 6-year-old and charge them because their first offense is going to be tender years doctrine. They don't have the mental capability to commit an offense yet because they don't have an appreciation of the right versus the wrong.
Okay, I'm good with that then. Yeah, I said. As far as the fine, I'd like to say two things about the fine, other than the fact that I think it should be $50 instead of $25. I think that there's some people who, well, first of all, I think that 25 maybe does not signify that we're serious about this, folks. You need to wear a mask. The other thing is that I think at 25, some people will say, 25? Well, heck, I'll pay that rather than have you tell me I have to wear a mask. And so I hate for it to be so low that people think that they just rather pay the fine than wear the mask.
And I believe, Patty, that that's for each offense. So it's just not going to be total $25. So if they continue to do it and they go from business to business to business and it is observed, that would be per offense. So 50 might be a little steep for that, especially if somebody's hidebound and they're going to, try it like 10 times.
Well, maybe they wouldn't know if it
Well, that's it. Anything else?
I think I believe that's all my notes. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. Kaiser.
Yes. Okay, a couple of things. I think we're going to have a very difficult time enforcing this. I don't know how we're going to enforce it, but I think one of the issues, and especially, I think it's very, it places a very burden on our businesses. I think that if you look at number 7 is what I'm having an issue with. And it places a lot of responsibility on the business owner and or employee that happens to be left there with enforcing. Reading over the Beaufort ordinance, Does anyone have a copy of that?
Here's the,
Number
about
5.
enforcement, yeah.
Look at number 5. If we can replace what we have, and it also says with the fine, it's a $50 first offense fine. So right there, it raises that. But it takes the burden off the business as to putting it back on the town as far as enforcing it.
And who's gonna do the warning?
Whoever the officials are who are going to be monitoring this.
Bert, you had an opinion on that. I had asked Bert about that, quite frankly.
Right, so, first I'd like to see if I understand what the concern is. When you say the burden of enforcing it, you understand, I assume you understand, that the business part of it requires the business to have their employees who deal with the public face-to-face wear a face mask.
Oh, correct, yes.
Under our ordinance, a business is not required to enforce customers coming in. There is no requirement for businesses to enforce that.
Okay, what?
In other words, there's no requirement for businesses to report customers that don't have masks or refuse customers that don't have masks. We don't have either one of those requirements. The enforcement is on the town as it relates to customers or citizens in general.
The offense on Jerome for the businesses is just not having their employees or people that interact with the public.
Correct.
Okay, well, what about the sentence that says for the purposes of enforcement, paragraph 3 of this ordinance, person shall be defined as in paragraph 7, as an individual associated with the business establishment subject to paragraph 3 of this ordinance, who has control or authority or ability to enforce requirements of this ordinance
Correct.
within the business establishment.
Right, for purposes of paragraph 3, which is the first part I said, paragraph 3 is the paragraph that relates to the businesses having their employees wear masks. Paragraph 2 is the paragraph that relates to the public or citizens wearing masks or public customers, in other words, when they come in. So the sentence that you're referencing applies only to the requirement that the businesses have their employees wear the mask, and we're defining person for purposes of paragraph 7, because specifically for that paragraph, because person has to be somebody who has the ability to manage or control the employees. So it has to be a manager, an owner, or whoever's, there who has control over the employees. We have to define that. To me, that was a weakness in the Beaufort ordinance that I addressed with the mayor, was that the Beaufort ordinance really doesn't address how to enforce the employee requirement to wear masks. So this, which is in line with the Columbia and the Greenville, does address that. So it doesn't, this paragraph 7, nor any part of the ordinance require a business to report or monitor their customers coming in that don't have masks or refuse them service if they don't have masks. This ordinance does not require that. The enforcement for individuals, customers, individuals related to paragraph 2 enforcement is on the town.
But are you concerned about a business owner
I
having to enforce it for their employees? Is that?
correct.
Is that?
No, not for their employees.
Oh, okay.
No, I was concerned for the
Okay.
customer because I just imagine confrontations taking place.
Correct, I do too. And that's why, and I think that's why the other municipalities that had already adopted this ordinance, essentially the substance of this ordinance, probably had the same concern too, is that you really don't want to make businesses the enforcers of a town law. That's not appropriate for the business to do that, and it does not do that. So it does not, like I said, it does not even require that if a customer comes in without a mask in violation of this ordinance, it does not require the business to refuse them entry or refuse to serve them.
But they may.
They,
They can.
that's a,
And the thing is, once the town passes this kind of ordinance, it does take a lot of the burden from a business owner, because whereas before they feel like, customers should be wearing masks, now I would hope it would be easier to say the town or county has now passed an ordinance that requires that people wear masks. I know one restaurant owner called me and said that, with this kind of ordinance, she would be able to say to a family of 5 coming in, I would love to see you, but our town has just passed an ordinance that requires that in order to come into our restaurant, you must be wearing a mask. And so that puts it on the town instead of on that business owner. So,
And that's exactly what some of them have said, that we really don't want to do it. We want the town to do it for us. And I think when we left here on Fridays, just so people know, I was kind of the same way. I was anxious to hear the governor's press conference, hoping that he would do, statewide. Since he did not, is the reason we're here today, with some events that occurred over the weekend. So let me get Ms. Hornsby's opinion, let her weigh in. Ms. Hornsby.
Thank you. I'm glad to understand that the businesses are not responsible for enforcing it. That makes my life a little easier. For me, this is a personal responsibility, but I also happen to occupy this seat on council. That makes me personally responsible for this community. I have one question. Is there a time limit on this ordinance?
Ms. Hornsby, it is for 60 days unless rescinded.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'll automatically expire on the 61st day after enactment of this ordinance, whichever date is earlier. And
Okay.
if we look at, you can do the math. If we enact it Wednesday, July the 1st, just count 60 days on the 61st, it would expire unless renewed by the state or the town or whatever. Yeah, it would require another meeting and another vote.
Okay.
so,
I just didn't want it to be permanent.
yeah,
Bert,
right, so 60 days is in there. It's not a random pick number. By state law, emergency ordinances can only last for a period of 60 days after which they expire. The language in there also allows an earlier expiration if y'all decide the situation, improves and want to go ahead and remove it earlier, you can, much like you did with the prior ordinances. But 60 days is the max that an emergency ordinance can stay in effect. So when it comes to the 60-day period, if the circumstances are, worse or whatever, y'all would have to get back together and make a decision on what you want to do with that.
and also,
I realize enforcing this is going to be a nightmare. The governor has said it's not enforceable, which is why he didn't do it. But I think we need to make the statement that this is what we do to protect ourselves and to protect our visitors, and we hope our visitors will comply.
thank you. Anything else?
Can I respond to that too?
Bert wants to respond to you.
I just want to clarify, when he says it's not enforceable, and I heard it and I listened to it, I believe he means it's practically not enforceable because of the numbers that are involved. Legally, it is enforceable. Okay, so I want to make sure we're not looking at an ordinance here that is not legally enforceable. It is legally enforceable. Practically, I think is what he was talking
Yeah, and there's a fine distinction that people need to understand.
Yes.
Anything else, Ms. Hornsby?
No, thank you. That's it.
All right.
Have question, or is this just for conversation of council?
If you'd wait and let me make my comments first, please. Okay, I want to make sure that people understand in the community. Apparently, a lot of people do not feel comfortable with legalese, which I don't many times either. But I'm gonna go ahead and answer a couple of ones that I can see, questions that will come up. The administrator is answering many online and is doing a good job. But I want to make this public. This ordinance does not, notice the word not, require a mask on the beach as long as social distancing is observed. Does not require a mask in your personal vehicle, actively exercising, or in your home with people with whom you reside. And I want to remind everybody, wearing a mask should not make you complacent. It is not the total picture. Remember that it is only one part of the protection regimen that you should be practicing. Masks should be combined with social distancing, hand washing, using hand sanitizers, cleaning frequently touched surfaces, and avoiding touching your mouth, nose, and eyes. So it's just part of the complete solution so that you are not contaminating somebody else and they're not finding you an easy host for the virus. That's my comment. Ms. Moore, you had one.
Yes, ma'am. I just want some clarification on my role with the town when it comes to the market. I see, and specifically in one and two, or excuse me, in number 2, business establishment which sells prepared foods and beverages, and then comma retail store. Technically, the market is neither. However, I do have vendors that sell prepared food. I have vendors that make food in front of their customers and gifts, such as kettle corn, pork skins. Am I considered a retail store at the market? Or-
Is that outdoors or indoors?
It's
Outdoors.
outdoors.
It,
Does not
this,
apply.
this principally deals with covered spaces
Correct.
and confined areas.
And I have a concern with some of the public coming into the vendor spaces in a 10 by 10 tent. And most of my vendors are protecting themselves. I just need to know whether or not I should continue to reassure that they wear a mask or say, hey, the town is requiring this. So that was my concern.
Yeah,
And that's been answered.
in that case, Kelly, I would ask my vendors to just tell somebody when they come up, you know, you're gonna have a difficult time
Absolutely.
because you're outside, you know, and people get careless outside. So, you know, I just ask my vendors to protect themselves. And when somebody comes up, ask them to observe a certain distance.
And many have, and I've recommended that they make their own signage in their spaces. I've also ordered signage that should be in tomorrow that'll be displayed around. And I will catch myself up on the Colleton County ordinance that passed for the Civic Center purposes. So thank you.
Yeah, because if that ordinance passes as written, it is gonna impact the citizens. Or could impact it for sure. Oh, it's already, sorry.
I wasn't aware and I need to see what's in there. I don't have a copy.
Chief Brothers, did you have comments?
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Hill?
Just under number 5, A, where it says while drinking, eating, or smoking actively.
Yes.
And I do think it would be nice if we could briefly summarize what this means to everyone, because it's very difficult to go through 2 pages of whereas statements, and then get down to the nuts and bolts, and then you have people understanding. And I've noticed on social media, most of the people are questioning, well, what exactly does this do? So if we could summarize that, and then I also have a comment from one of the business owners that I'd like to read into that.
Okay. If we go to the bottom of the whereas, which apparently Attorney Duffy just absolutely loves, but it does give us justification.
Y'all don't love when getting sued, do you?
He's-
I'm having to defend
Taylor,
lawsuits.
are you getting ready to summarize?
Yes.
Because before we do that, could we get some clarification? One, because you had mentioned the date of Wednesday, July 1st, but the ordinance says Tuesday, June 30th at 6 a.m., which would be tomorrow morning.
I asked that be changed.
That was just between Bert and I going back and forth.
Right.
He missed that because I didn't tell him that.
Yeah.
But we can change that to July 1st.
And then the other thing is, I mentioned the fine, but I didn't hear feedback from anyone. Is there anybody else that would be willing to make the fine $50, or am I a lone wolf out here?
You may be out on a limb.
Is that on number 6 that you're talking about?
Number 6, yes, instead of 25, making it 50.
You know, Patty, the idea is a civil matter. And the idea is not to hammer somebody with a fine, but to simply use it as some deterrent, you know? So, and we don't necessarily need to make money off of it. We simply want to protect our health.
Yeah, I'm not concerned about us making money.
Yeah.
I'm just concerned about sending a strong message.
Well, you know, if this doesn't work, we can meet back. But, you know, we tried warning people, and this is the next step. So it's a moderate fine, and hopefully they don't have $25 just laying in a drawer that they can pay, you know, 5 or 6 times while they're here. So, you know, and I found, one of the questions somebody asked was, have you talked with businesses? That's what I spent my weekend doing. And I know Jerome, I've been in his ear for a while. And I wanted to see what, if anybody was doing anything that I had not considered. And what I discovered with most of them was towns should be doing the ordinance, you know. They don't want to be the bad guys. They can, if somebody comes in and complains, they can say, well, that wasn't me, that's the town. All right, the second thing I discovered is, so now we're here today, you know, we are the town. The second thing I discovered is, believe it or not, people that come from other areas have masks. You know, I asked my husband and the owner of the Ship store on Saturday. They agreed to work with me. They put a sign on the door. They monitor people coming in and asking them to have a mask. Well, their response was most people would reach in their purse or their pocket and pull out a mask, or they'd say, oh, just let me run back to the car and get one. There were very few people that did not have a mask. Those people that didn't have a mask, that didn't want to use a mask, they really didn't have anybody. You know, it was not an antagonistic situation. So I felt better. The response was probably over 80% of the people had a mask with them.
That was my take on it too, because I had put up several signs at my store too, and say, thank you for wearing your mask. And I even had people that were walked out, looked at the sign, turned around, went back to the car, got their mask and came back in. That, well, just by that, I just have to say, I'm probably the bad guy here, but that's why I don't want to mandate this, because if you ask them, I believe the majority will do it. And that we wouldn't have to do an ordinance for this. And I just think that a larger businesses like the Bilo and things, if they would just put signs up saying that, please wear your mask in the store, and I think people would be conscious of it. Which brings me to another question about the town, and we talked about it Friday, about the town providing masks for the businesses. Did we get anywhere with that?
We placed an order today for 500 masks.
So
We have to see if they're needed, but we did place an order. George, do you know how long you said it would be in?
About a week.
And one of the concerns somebody that sent in was, what if people can't afford a mask? And I want you to know, I have a very good friend who's the mayor of Beaufort, and I admire him tremendously. He put me in touch with a program that has a grant to provide masks for underserved populations. So he has promised me some this week. I don't know how many yet, you know, but it's not 1, 2, or 50. And I will have them picked up in Beaufort, and they will be distributed through the food pantry. So there's no reason, for people that want to shop in the town that cannot afford a mask or do not have one to go without. Okay. I will be glad to summarize, but I'm going to ask council to help me. So, Mr. Kaiser, would you please be so nice as to read page 3, starting with number 1, down to and through number 6? Ms. Snyder, would you pick up, I feel like I'm back teaching school. Ms. Snyder, would you pick up with 7 and read through 9 and include the last summation sentence, please? Mr. Kaiser.
Okay. For the purposes of this ordinance and the use herein, face covering means a uniform piece of cloth, fabric, or other material that securely covers the face, the person's nose and mouth, remains affixed in place without the use of one's hands. Face coverings include, but are not limited to, bandanas, medical masks, cloth masks, scarves, gaiters, provided that they are worn such that they securely cover the person's nose and mouth. Number 2, all persons entering a restaurant, business establishment which sells prepared food and beverages, retail store, salon, barbershop, grocery store, convenience store, gas station, pharmacy in the town shall wear a face covering at all times while inside the business establishment, unless exempted as provided in paragraphs 4 and 5 herein. Number 3, all restaurants, business establishment which sells prepared food and beverages, retail stores, salons, barbershops, grocery stores and convenience stores, gas stations, and pharmacies in the town shall require their employees to wear a face covering at all times while having face-to-face interaction with the public unless the employee is exempted as provided in paragraphs 4 and 5 herein. Number 4, any person who is unable to safely wear a face covering due to age, an underlying health condition, or is unable to move the face covering without the assistance of others is exempt from this ordinance. Number 5, face coverings are not required in the following circumstances: while drinking, eating, or smoking.
There was one amendment to that was recommended. Councilman Kaiser, if I can interrupt just a minute,
Yes, ma'am.
to interject the word while actively drinking, eating, or smoking.
Think about that, because when you add stuff, that gives a trigger for challenge. So go ahead with the reading and
All right.
Think about it before we get
I'll
to the end.
ruminate it on it.
And B, when wearing a face covering would prevent the receipt of personal services. C, for people whose religious beliefs prevent them from wearing a face covering. D, when a person is 10 years of age or younger. 6, a person who fails to wear a face mask in compliance with paragraph 2 violates this ordinance and shall be guilty of a civil infraction, punishable by a fine of not more than $25.
Number 7, a person who fails to comply with paragraph 3 violates this ordinance and shall be guilty of a civil infraction punishable by a fine of not more than $100. Each day of the continuing violation of paragraph 3 of this ordinance shall be considered a separate and distinct offense. In addition to the fines established by this paragraph, repeated violations of this ordinance by a person as defined in this paragraph 7 may, subject to all procedural protections set forth in the town code, result in the suspension or revocation of any occupancy permit or business license issued to a business where the repeated violations occurred. Repeated violations of this ordinance are additionally hereby declared to be a public nuisance, which may be abated by the town by restraining order, preliminary or permanent injunction, or other means provided for by the laws of this state. For the purposes of enforcement of paragraph 3 of this ordinance, person shall be defined in this paragraph 7 as any individual associated with a business establishment, subject to paragraph 3 of this ordinance, who has the control or authority and ability to enforce the requirements of this ordinance within the business establishment, such as an owner, manager, or supervisor. Person also includes an employee or other designee who is present at the business but does not have the title of manager, supervisor, etc., but has the authority and ability to ensure the requirements of this ordinance are met while the business establishment is open to the public. Number 8, should any provision, paragraph, sentence, or word of this ordinance be rendered or declared invalid by any final court action in a court of competent jurisdiction or by reason of any preemptive legislation, the remaining provisions, paragraphs, sentences, or words of this ordinance as hereby adopted shall remain in full force and effect. Number 9, this ordinance is effective as of 6 o'clock.
6 a.m.
6 a.m. Wednesday, July 1st, 2020. This ordinance shall be terminated by the issuance of another ordinance or shall automatically expire on the 61st day after enactment of this ordinance, whichever date is earlier. Enacted this day, the 29th day of June, 2020, by the Town Council of the Town of Edisto Beach, South Carolina.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the emergency ordinance 2020-21 in regard to face coverings for COVID-19.
Is
I'll
there,
second.
I have a second from Ms. Hornsby. Any further discussion?
I have.
Ms. Hill?
Have you had a chance to think about the actively? What's your comment?
So the concern I have with putting actively drinking or eating is that a strict construction of that means that a person who is sitting down at a table in a restaurant or whatever, actively would mean they'd have to wear a mask until they put the fork to the mouth. They'd have to take the mask off because at that point they're actively eating. It's too strict of a language to be enforceable. And I don't think the purpose of this ordinance is to require customers who are at a restaurant seated at their table, generally eating their food and having their conversation, to take on and off their mask at that point. It doesn't, that's not the intent of it, once they're seated. Now, if they're in line at the restaurant or they're waiting for a table, that's a different situation and they're required to have it. So I think the actively word really is too stringent of a regulation. And then, if you've got an actively eating, you then presumably would have a passively eating, and I don't know what that means either. So I think it's too much from a legal standpoint.
Okay, I think council can probably live with that.
Okay, and I have another question, and this is maybe something you can to. So it says that it's punishable by a fine of not more than $25, but we have fees that are associated with the civil fine. So if someone receives a citation and it ends up being $40 instead of $25 because of the fees,
Assessments.
that's gonna cause some issues with us, because we're gonna hear back and say, well, it was $25, but in essence, it's not just $25.
It's more likely going to be $70 or $75.
It's gonna be like $70 or $75.
Oh, I take that.
So the question is,
No, the assessments will never be. The assessments typically will never be over 107.5% around that number.
Well, a $25 speeding ticket is 76
That must be a minimum.
so I know that's gonna create some issues when someone, it's not like a parking ticket where they get a $25 or $50 parking ticket. They're gonna get a ticket for this, and instead of $25, it's gonna be substantially more, which is going to create and generate a lot of calls.
So let me give you the criminal example of how that goes. You have, both by town ordinance, you have misdemeanor violations that are punishable by $500 fines. There are also other state laws, for example, that are punishable by $500 fines. So with the assessment by the code, by the ordinance, by the way it's written, it's $500. The state requires assessments be added to fines so that the state can fund the state judicial system. So when the chief, for example, if he were to issue a criminal charge against someone for a town violation misdemeanor and it's a $500 fine, that he would actually, including the assessments, issue that for 1092, is that right?
1076.
1076. Approximately $1,076. That is already going on. That is normal. The chief does have the ability to issue the fine for less in the criminal setting, as he does here. I'm using him as an example because he's sitting in here, but law enforcement does have that ability to do that as well. So that is something that will come into play. Whatever fine is assessed to the person, assessments required by state law will be taken from the amount that the person is charged. That makes sense? So if he does fine him $25, half of that, more or less, is gonna go to the state for assessments. Half of the states.
Okay. Is that, y'all understand? Okay. All right, I have a motion on the floor. I have a second. Any further discussion? And so after that, Mr. Duffy, I get that the only real change is the date of enactment, which should be July 1, Wednesday, July 1. Is that everybody else's assessment?
And he took out the word active.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. We did. So at this point, I am ready to call a vote. I shall do it by roll call. And the motion is to pass the ordinance as written with just the enactment date. We have struck the word active from it. Would Ms. Smythe, Councilman Kaiser,
Opposed.
all right, Ms. Hornsby,
Aye.
Ms. Darby, aye. And let the record show that Councilman Moore is not in attendance. But we have a quorum, and we have a vote of 3, 4, and 1 opposed. Any further questions? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?